to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Welcome to another special segment of the Crypto Skeptic here on LOA Today, and I'm with Mikkel Thorup, he's got an interesting story, guys. I mean, I'm telling you, this is a really interesting story. We've heard a lot of good interviews over the years that I've been doing the LOA Today podcast, and since we started doing the Crypto Skeptic, there's been some good stuff there. But this is like an extension of many of the stories that we've heard in the past. We've heard rags to riches stories. We've heard crash and burn stories that rose like the phoenix. We've had all kinds like this. I think this is the first time, though, that I've interviewed somebody who dropped out of school at age 12 to become a millionaire. You don't hear that story every day. So, Mikkel, first of all, thank you for joining me on the show. How you doing?
Thank you very much, Walt. I'm very excited about jumping into today's conversation. What an interesting show you have. I think this is just great.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it very much. And we're interested in your story. So tell us a little bit more. How do you drop out of school at age 12, first of all? I didn't know you could even get away with that. And then secondly, what happened? How you turned into a millionaire? Wow.
Sure. So what ended up happening was I was born in southwestern Ontario. I'm from Canada. And when I was in grade 3, I had the teacher pulled me out of class one day, pulled me out of class and sat me down in a little room. And there was the principal and the resource teacher and maybe the vice principal, something like this. And they sat me down and they said, Mikkel, something doesn't work quite right in your brain. And what we want to do is we want to send you to a special school for special boys. So that's what they did. Well, every day I got on a little white bus. I took the little white bus across town and I went to this quote unquote special school. Now, the only problem was that it was actually a regular school with a special class. So you can probably imagine what happened. I got picked on, I got in fights, I got bullied. Now, this is no woe is me, I'm a victim, poor Mikkel. Certainly not. Like, I gave as good as I got. You know, I got hit, I hit back. I'm not going to claim otherwise in any fashion. But what it did was leave a very bad taste in my mouth for public education, for school. So after 3 years of going to this quote unquote special school, I went back to my old neighborhood school and I thought this is going to be amazing. My friends will have missed me so much. They're going to be so excited to see me. And I show up and you probably once again, guess what happened? All the kids started whispering and gossiping. Oh, I know Mikkel. He went to some retard school. 1980s, totally politically correct. You know how kids are, very, very sensitive, you know. Thanks, guys. So, I started failing. And I would stop going to school, and then they would put me in summer school and then I'd stop going to that and I'd fail that. And somehow I'd squeak by and get into the next year and then I'd fail and fail. So I basically stopped going to school at 12 years old. And at 15, I officially dropped out. I had finished earlier, like at 12 years old. I wasn't going. I wasn't interested. I wasn't, engaged whatsoever. But, officially I dropped out when I was 15 and I started traveling not long after that. And I started traveling and seeing the world as a teenager internationally. And it was the most amazing experience I had ever had in my life. And I started to meet all these incredible people who were doing things so different than what I had been learned or what I had been told when I was a child. And I decided at a very young age that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to base my life on exploring the world. And that's what I've done. For the last 22 years, I've been traveling nonstop. So I visited just under 110 countries now. I've lived in 9 and I've circumnavigated the globe over 400 times. And during this, I did a ton of research and learned different things and trial and error and was the guinea pig on many different types of immigration issues and tax issues and things like that. So I figured out a lot, things that no one else knows and really you cannot go to school for at all. And that's what I do for a living now. I actually help move people offshore and become expats and deal with their financial issues. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA, and I don't play one on television, but I actually outsource a lot of the work to the lawyers that work for me. I have full-time lawyers that work for me and, run a very successful company now doing exactly this.
Very nice. I like that. I have to throw in a little comment too. I can't resist. You were told basically, they didn't actually say this outright because that was not the way it was handled in the 1980s. But for all intents and purposes, you were told you were stupid. You were told that you were, to use your very deplorable tag from that era, a retard. And when you went back to rejoin the actual school again, you lived down to that reputation. You did exactly what they trained you to do, which I think is really fascinating.
Well, it's interesting because you are told you can't do something, and that becomes your reality, especially as a child and especially at those formative years. Now, I had some piece of me that knew that it was wrong, and I knew that it was wrong so much that I stood up and removed myself from the situation.
Which is huge.
At 12 years old, did I know that I was going to go on and build a business and have 20 staff and make lots of money and do all these things that I wanted to do? No, I had no idea. But what I did know was the situation was wrong. And I had to remove myself from that. So that is kind of the genesis of why I left school. But, yes, I absolutely believe that we create everything ourselves. That as long as it is within the realm of physics, we can do anything and everything. I mean, my learning disability, quote unquote learning disability that they pulled me out of school for is dyslexia, which is in this day and age we know is actually really, really common. It's not a very big deal.
Nope.
And you know what? I've read over 3,000 books in my life. And
so much for that diagnosis.
Exactly. So it's like, you can't read. There's something wrong with you. You can't read. And so what do? I work harder than anybody else, and I find mediums that speak to me. Now, I will preface it saying that probably 50% of those books were audible or audio books. But for me, that's still reading. I mean, I
think it is for most people. Audiobooks are popular these days. So, I mean, if all the people listening to audiobooks aren't reading, then what are they doing?
Well, it's that thing, when you're supposed to fit into an exact type of mold. And at that age, reading a physical book, especially when, they put you up in the front of the class and want you to read in front of everybody and you're already nervous and you're already scared about these things.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. Now, I'm a very audio type of person. I have a podcast of my own, the Expat Money Show. We're doing episode 200 this week. We've been going for 6 years. Thank you. I'm very excited about that. So audio really speaks to me. So, I've read thousands of books, but quote unquote dyslexia enough that you pull me out of school. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest, public schools are ridiculous, but that's not our topic today. We could spend a whole show on that one, but we won't do that one. Instead, we're going to talk about, we're doing the crypto skeptic, which is tied into the concept of cryptocurrency. And those of my listeners who've been tuning into those episodes have an idea of where we've been talking about it. In general, really the topic is about the monetary system, and anyone interested in the law of attraction realizes money is a big part of that. If you want to live an abundant lifestyle, you need money, and that's just the bottom line. That's the world that we live in. So of course, people aren't interested in money, which is why the whole cryptocurrency subject is an interesting subtopic for us. But there's also more to it than that, because what we're really talking about is lifestyle. And you developed, you just described in very few words how you developed a new lifestyle for yourself with no guidance, no training. There were no guidebooks to read. You couldn't go get coached on. How do I go do this? I mean, there was nobody to teach you. You basically taught yourself, which, by the way, I applaud you for. But tell us a little bit about some of what you learned doing all that, because, I mean, if you have built up a successful business where you have lawyers working for you, how cool is that? If you have built that up, you've learned a lot along the way. Share some of that stuff.
Yeah, I would describe myself as an autodidact polymath. I am an expert.
Not bad for somebody who's dyslexic, by the way, to come up with that term. I have to just say that.
Say that again, sorry?
I said not bad for somebody who's dyslexic to come up with a term like that. That's really
there we go. Yeah, I would consider myself an autodidact polymath, basically meaning that I'm an expert in many different fields, more of a Renaissance man type of thing. Now, I think that this is really important because in today's day and age, we have so many specialists. We have specialists who can do one particular thing at a very, very deep level, but everything else in their life is, in many cases, falling apart or is not in balance or not in harmony with anything else that they do. And I don't believe in this at all. Or for me, it has not worked. In 22 years of traveling and seeing the world, this has not been good. So what I am always trying to do is set myself up for success in all fields. So I try to always put myself in a place where things are going to be automatically successful. I don't want to be one of these people who only specializes in one thing. I can do brain surgery, but I don't know how to tie my shoes, or I can't wash the dishes, or I can't care for myself. I'm a husband and a father and a son, and I have, my mother lives with us. I have 2 children, and I have my wife, and I care for all of them. And we're in a very good position where I can take care of that. But I can build a fantastic business, and a business that fits my lifestyle, because I have a good home life. And I have a good home life because I treat my wife with respect, and I take care of her, and I care for her feelings. There's all these different layers. I try not to look at just, controlling my willpower on one specific thing. I'm more concerned about making sure that I'm always in the right frame of mind and have the right mental state to be able to deal with the situations that are in front of me. So have I slept enough? Have I ate properly? Do I exercise? Is everything taken care of? Are all the people that are around me, are they in a good emotional state? If my mother or my children are upset and they're screaming and they have stress, then how am I going to be able to perform at my best?
Right.
So these are the types of things that I try to set up in my life, which allows me to learn and study and do good work, which allows me to be valuable in the marketplace and help so many other people realize their dreams. Does that all make sense? I'm trying to unpack it and go through it kind of line by line, how my brain works.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if I were to summarize it in 2 words, I would say mindset and balance. And mindset is a topic we talk about all the time here on the program. So I'm thrilled that you're bringing that one in. And balance, well, yeah, if your life is out of balance, it's going to show up in a lot of different ways. And if your life is in balance, well, that's going to show up in a lot of different ways. So first of all, congratulations on discovering all that through your own means. What does it mean to you, though? I mean, when you think about those 2 terms, because I kind of summarized your stuff into 2 words, but when you think about mindset and balance, what do you think about?
So mindset is extraordinarily important to me. I'm very, very protective of my mental state, how I use my time, and what I put into my brain. So I'm very careful about the mediums, the medias, and the people that I associate with and spend time with. I will say goodbye to people, even if I've had them in my life for 20 years, if it's a toxic relationship. And the nice thing about being an expat, and maybe this is terrible to say, but when you move overseas, you really can choose exactly who you're going to be with and who you're going to spend time with. And if you have friends from high school or family members or a cousin who is not going anywhere and is not going to propel you into having your best life, then it's very easy to say goodbye. So now I've lived overseas nine times, nine different countries, we can say. And the best people out of every country, location that I've lived in, I keep them with me. I talk to them on a regular basis. I have my one friend, Lish. I've known her for the whole 20 years, and I've lived in 3 different cities with her, and she's been one of my best friends. And the people who I met and were not going the same place as me, thank you very much for our time together. It's been wonderful, but goodbye, and usually you don't even have to say goodbye. The things just kind of fade away. And I'm always thankful for everybody who's in my life because I'm always learning something. But the people who really mean something stay with me, and those who are not get left aside. So that's how I think about people, and I think about content and media and movies and TVs and books and anything like that I put in my brain in exactly the same way. I'm very particular about what I read and who I read and every piece of the puzzle. And as you start to become more aware in what's happening in the world and how politics affects everything, you really have to understand that your mind is a very precious and delicate thing, and you are going to get out of it what you put into it. So I think that probably no other explanation is needed on a program like yours, You
did wonderful with that. That was fabulous. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about what it's like being an expat, living overseas, actually from where your perspective living away from home, maybe, or the ex-home, or however you want to look at it. But there are certainly some skill sets that you picked up along the way. And I suspect there are people who would be interested in that simply because, I mean, I'm meeting and knowing more and more people who are choosing to leave the U.S. or Canada and live in other locations for a variety of reasons, not the least of which can be economics. But tell us a little bit about what's involved there.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways that we can look at this. So yes, absolutely, the economic issues is a massive driver, and we can get into all of those. But maybe first I would like to touch on some of the personal reasons that someone might want to look at being an expat.
Sure.
Now, I'm from Canada. I spent 16 years, 17 years living in Canada. I have a pretty good understanding of what Canada is like. Mm-hmm. Now, the world is a very big place. There's 193 countries recognized by the United Nations. And most people seem to think that it's basically Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, North America, and then like the rest of the world is like a jungle. It's like
jungle,
it's like savagery. And it's like, no, I mean, most countries in the world, like statistically, are free countries. Most countries in the world are perfectly safe, and they have really interesting people with culture and different perspectives and history and food and language and so much rich experiences. Now, for me, the difference between being an expat and, say, just a tourist is a tourist, you're going to go over for a couple of days or a week. Maybe you're going to be confined to a small area, where other tourists are, and a resort or something like that. As an expat, the purpose is to move to a new country and learn about all these different things, meet the local people, understand things from their point of view, their perspective. I think that this is so cool. And if you can learn the other language, like even better. Because if you think that normally how we interact with someone as native English speakers, we would always make them interact with us on our playing field.
Right.
They're always at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Now, I speak fluent Spanish, and I live here in Panama City, which is where I am today. And I do not get to do that. I'm living life in Spanish on most occasions. Okay, I work in English, but all my day-to-day stuff, we have a nanny, a full-time nanny that works at the house, and a maid, and if we have to go out shopping and everything like that, I'm not forcing them to learn English or anything like that. I have to struggle and bumble and fumble my way through, which is an amazingly humbling experience and really challenges me as a human being. I've lived in Singapore. I lived in the Middle East for 8 years. I lived in Australia, New Zealand, and all of these types of experience really made me grow as a human being. It's this weird thing. It's like, I like being uncomfortable. And when things get really, really comfortable, it's like, I want to change, this is too easy. I need to learn something new. I need to find something. So there's normal learning we can do from like academics. We can learn by reading books about stories and people and biographies and things like that. But a different type of learning, and the one that has spoken to me most in my life, is learning through experiences, putting myself in a challenging situation, working my way through it, and coming out the other end and being like, wow, that wasn't easy. However, there's all these new skill sets. And I do this from the professional side, but I also do it from the personal side. So just very quickly, like, I'm Canadian with Danish heritage. I met my wife in Germany. She's from mainland China. We got married in Africa. Our daughter was born in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. Our son was born in Florianopolis in Brazil. And we live here in Panama. And we're buying a home in Turkey right now. So, I mean,
my goodness.
It's from all fronts. Like, I just love this stuff. I love the international space and being an expat and what it means and exploring and meeting all these people. Like, I'm really passionate about it. I hope that, comes through. So I feel very lucky
I think
about this.
you're safe on that ground. It comes through pretty loud and clear. Yeah. I don't think you have any problems there. I was caught by your statement, and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but the gist of it was, I don't like not feeling uncomfortable. Like, you want to feel uncomfortable. You look for it. That's not something most people do. Most people are looking to feel good, feeling comfortable, feel like, safe and secure.
I like being challenged.
Like
no way. I want to be challenged. I want to grow. I want to experience new things. Like, traveling, like real, like in-depth traveling is not easy by any means. Like, I don't mean we're taking a flight to an all-inclusive resort. You get a little wristband and you sit on the beach for a week and everything's provided for you. I mean, I've been to North Korea and Iran. I've drove across Africa. I've been to Uganda. I sit on the board of directors for a nonprofit in Uganda.
Really?
And, we do all kinds of, you might think random things, but there is a rhyme and a reason for all of this. I'm very purposeful about all of it, but they've all been very challenging and rich experiences. And I was thinking about it recently. Well, a lot of my friends, they play sports or they have hobbies or something like that. And I'm like, I don't have any hobbies. And I was thinking about it for a month or two and I was like, oh yeah, wait, traveling is my hobby. That's
absolutely
what I do,
Yeah.
I do it for business. I do it in my personal life. I do it for fun. I just got back from Cyprus, Rome, Turkey, North Cyprus, and Lebanon like 2 weeks ago. And I was in Peru about 2 weeks before that or 3 weeks before that. And I've been in Aruba this year and Uruguay and Brazil. I mean, COVID didn't slow us down. Nothing slowed us down. Like we just go, 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 go. And my daughter's been all over the place. The whole family's involved. And
that alone, that last about 2 sentences ago, that caught some people's attention. What do you mean COVID didn't slow you down? It slowed everybody else down. How did you manage that?
No, so we had a bit of lockdowns here in Panama. So what we did instead was we decided to do birth tourism. So we were looking for a good place to give birth that was nice and open. My wife was, I think 5-6 months pregnant. And we flew down to Brazil, which was wide open during COVID. And we went to this beautiful island called Florianopolis, Floripa. And it's a very libertarian island in the south of Brazil. And I met some people down there and they invited us down and we gave birth there. And we were there for 6 months.
Wow.
Living in Brazil and learning Portuguese. And we ended up having a huge group of friends and cooking churrasco every day. And so I have a little Brazilian baby. Where else did I go? I was in Mexico. I was in Costa Rica. We went to Costa Rica for 3 weeks in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember. Maybe 2021. Lots of places. Still, any place that was open, we were going to check it out.
You really do underline with not just your words, but with your life, with your lifestyle. You triple underline the fact that you really can choose your own life. You really can attract the kind of life you want. And it really doesn't matter what kinds of blocks or roadblocks or stones or barriers that people put in your way. It really comes down to what do you believe you want to do and are you willing to follow through on it?
Well, it's funny. I had people who told me all through growing up or through my travels, like, this is nice. Get it out of your system while you can. But, when you want to have a career or when you want to start a family, you're going to have to come home and settle down. Well, like, yeah, no way. My daughter, she just turned 6 last week. She's been to 15 countries already.
Wow.
And she speaks English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese all at native level. And now she's learning Russian. So we give her private one-on-one lessons with a Russian teacher. We homeschool our kids. And she takes her piano classes. We found someone from Russia who teaches piano here in Panama.
Wow.
And so she does all the lessons in Russian. And I mean, she's like little international kiddo and she's always asking about when we're going away and the next trip and where we're going to be and everything like that. So. And
at age 6, she's a sponge. She's just soaking all this stuff up. It's like it goes through her fingertips. She doesn't even hardly have to think about it. Not like those of us who've been around 20, 30, 40 years and we have a bunch of baggage we have to get past. She's got direct channel. Let's just plug it right in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about currencies too, because when you travel, you are dealing with currencies. And I do want to touch on the cryptocurrency just a bit because that is, the ostensive reason for the program today. So first of all, do you engage in the use of cryptocurrencies in anything that you do?
Yes, absolutely. I use it mostly as a real life need as opposed to I'm an investor or a speculator. Okay. I have lots and lots of crypto for sure, but I never came to crypto with like, oh, this is my get rich quick scheme or my money making scheme. Now, I can give you a couple of real life examples why it is so important. It's very helpful for Americans and Canadians. However, when you start looking at Latin America or Africa or these types of countries that don't have banking or remittance fees, basically sending money in and outside of the country, are very, very expensive, then cryptocurrencies is an absolute lifesaver. And I'll give you an example. I had a recent client who needed to pay me for some immigration work here in Panama. So he went to send me money through normal bank transfer remittance from Brazil. And I think they took 25% of the overall, basically a tax on the remittance fee. So he had to send me $4,000 and 1,000 of it went to pay for the remittance, to pay for these types of fees and this tax. Insane. A quarter of it. So straight off the bat, he's losing a quarter of his money right off the bat. Now, if he had sent me in BTC and Bitcoin, it probably would have been about 73 cents or something like that. And instead of taking, 3 weeks and having to provide a ridiculous amount of documentation on why it is being sent and who it's being sent to and what is the work. And everything that we do is completely legal. There's nothing dodgy or in the gray zone or anything like that. I'm doing immigration work for him in Panama. It's very, very vanilla, but it's so much paperwork that needed to be done for this. With cryptocurrency, there's nothing like this. It's just we have a private agreement. We have a contract between two consenting adults. He needs help with something. I'm a consultant. I help him with it. I give him my knowledge, my expertise, my experience, and he pays for that time. So we could have actually got it started 3 weeks earlier, saved himself $999.23 or something like this. And he could have used that to provide for his family or take his own kids on vacation or do anything that he wanted in the world. But instead it went to something that he had no control over. And you'll find so many examples like this in Latin America and in Africa and in certain parts of Asia where maybe as North Americans, we don't really think about it. We don't really know or understand it because it's not an everyday piece of our lives. But these are like the number one reasons that Bitcoin has gone to Bitcoin as legal tender, because the remittance fees going back and forth between the United States was absolutely ridiculous. Like billions of dollars being wasted and going to Western Union, which is a really inefficient and ineffective system. And they implement something like this. And now these people who don't have so much means can use it to spend on their family in more productive ways that are going to help them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think actually that's one of the better arguments in favor of cryptocurrency, and one that I've latched onto pretty much from the beginning, because I do agree that part is very, very important. For me, the biggest problems, the biggest challenge with cryptocurrency was really the primary question, which was the question that was raised and they thought they were answering it when Bitcoin first came out and when its advocates started to advocate for it, which was it would become the next major international global currency. It would basically supplant the dollar, supplant the euro, supplant the central banking system. And that's the part that I'm skeptical about. The parts that I think are actually cool are the other parts. I mean, certainly anybody who lives, particularly you mentioned Africa, there are many African countries where monetary system that is in play there is in many cases out of control. Zimbabwe comes to mind, for instance. And, when you live in a country like that, you're desperate for a currency that, regardless of whether it retains its value, at least gives you the ability to live. Whereas the other currency doesn't. The other kind of currency basically steals all your livelihood from you. So yeah, in those situations, a cryptocurrency certainly could be a godsend. I think the question that goes along with this in my mind, though, is since our global monetary system is basically run by the dollar through the Fed and the euro through the European banking system, and to a lesser extent, the British pound and a few other currencies like that, since that's where all the power is, they see crypto coming along. They already have rung the alarm bells. Right now, you're able to conduct those transactions basically off their books, because that's really what you're doing when you're avoiding those fees. You're doing it off their books. And they think they put those taxes and rules and regulations in for good reasons. They're trying to stop money laundering. They're trying to balance economies. They're trying to do all this stuff that they consider to be very, very good. And they consider Bitcoin to be a threat to all that, and some of the other major cryptocurrencies as well. So there's a lot of discussion going on right now within central banking circles. There are central banks that are actually in the process of trying to create their own cryptocurrencies. They see that that's a trend, but they want to control the whole thing. So that I'm setting all that up to ask you a rather pointed question. What do you think happens as they start to weigh into the marketplace to something like Bitcoin, and particularly when they weigh in with regulating Bitcoin? Do you think they succeed? Do you think they fail? What do you think plays out there?
Well, I think you're making an assumption that they're going to try to regulate Bitcoin. And in my research and what I've seen, they're not doing that. What they're trying to do instead is regulate the on-ramps and the off-ramps for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Fair point. Yep.
So I think that it's going to be very difficult to regulate Bitcoin itself. Mm-hmm. Now, making more regulations on BlockFi and Kraken and all of these types of exchanges, I think that's where they're going to be putting their efforts. Now, a lot of these are already disclosing information to the tax authorities, but there's no reason that people need to participate in these types of things. And I'm not telling people to go and money launder, and certainly that's not what we're doing. I have no tax responsibilities for any of this. And as far as my understanding is, and in my example, it wasn't getting outside of currency controls or anything like that. These are fees which are imposed by the banks, so on the remittance. So I think that it's going to be very, very difficult to regulate Bitcoin itself or any other type of cryptocurrency, especially if you start having a conversation about any type of privacy coins or ones that are just so far ahead of what the centralized governments are doing. And you are right that they are trying to bring in their own cryptocurrencies. Now, this is a power grab because they want to have more control. They have no interest in relinquishing any type of control. And I think that there is a massive fight on our hands. But will they be able to succeed, or exactly what their plans are or how they're doing it? I really couldn't speculate on that.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough, because none of us really know. We won't know until they actually take their steps. I think it's fair to say they're not going to give up without a fight. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but you can look at some countries in the world who are actually fully adopting this. So you have areas in Switzerland that you can pay your income tax in cryptocurrency. We mentioned El Salvador already. Panama has come forward and said that you can settle any debt, personal or state, in BTC and Bitcoin. And we're seeing more countries. We see the Central African Republic that are going to be making this, which is, I think, the second poorest country on planet Earth. So it'll be really interesting to follow over the next 20, 30, 40 years as this progresses and what happens to the economy and how people react to it. It's a giant experiment, and I'm really excited to allow this to happen and flourish and let entrepreneurship go where it will, and let these different projects flourish.
And I think you're right to name some of the more poor countries, because they are the ones where their central banks have manipulated currency so badly that the population suffers tremendously as a result. So they're going to be ripe for something like a Bitcoin to come along. And I suspect that's where the biggest inroads will be made, for sure. I
was in Lebanon 3 weeks ago, and the inflation is at roughly 1,700% annually. 1,700%.
Really? Is that high in Lebanon? Wow,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
This is what I was told. Inflation is at 1,700%. Unemployment is at 60%. They've lost the SWIFT system, so they have no international banking. Visa and MasterCards don't work there unless it's in really specific places. Like, the country is an absolute mess. And it's such a shame because it's a gorgeous country with amazing people there with a really rich history. You mentioned Zimbabwe. I've been to Zimbabwe. I've seen what that is like myself. We need an alternative. Like, there is no question about it. You're not going to be able to change these governments and what's happening, or, politics is not going to work for this. We need something that's completely separate.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so different than what most people would know and understand.
This is very good. One of the things that frustrates me about doing this segment is I tend to do it an hour before I do the regular podcast for LOA Today, which usually means I don't get a full hour out of it. And I can tell the same thing's going to happen here, but we'll get in as much as we can because I'm enjoying this conversation. I think listeners are enjoying it too. So, okay. Well, we've touched on, some of the issues involved with crypto. Let's talk about the immigration side because you focus on that with your practice and that's like the focus of your business. I imagine there's quite a bit of demand for help with that. I suspect that the demand covers a wide range of areas. It's probably not just like one solution fits all. It's probably very individualized. Let's talk about some of the things you deal with there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What normally happens with my clients is they kind of fit into one of two buckets. Okay. I have the people who are done with with Canada, done with the United States. They want to move overseas, whether that be the reasons we talked about before, or they don't like the political situation or the direction of the government or standing on the military or whatever that might be for them. They're done. They want to leave, but they don't know where. They don't know how. They don't know, what works, what doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of like bucket number one. Bucket number two is they want to have a plan B. They want to have a residency. They want to have a second passport. They want a bank account or a company formation or precious metals held offshore or a brokerage account or cryptocurrency offshore in case they need it, in case they need to actuate the plan and the plan B becomes the plan A and they leave. And what this does, I have seen for a lot of my clients, is it really allows them to sleep soundly at night. Sure. They know that their family is protected, that if something gets worse, if things get really bad, they have a backup plan and they can leave. So I kind of consider it like political insurance. Okay.
That's clever. I like that.
That's how I like to think about it. This is political insurance. We have insurance for, our house burns down or we get into an automobile accident or something like this. This is our political insurance. The key is though that the insurance needs to be put in place beforehand, not after. Mm-hmm. So people come to me. I work as a consultant and I have a number of different tracks that I take them down. And it really doesn't matter to me from which side they're coming from. We can work on both sides, either bucket number one or bucket number two. And sometimes I have clients who go through the whole process, hire me, we get things and they decide, you know what? It's not for me. I'm going to stay where I am. But at least in their mind, they've explored this. They've learned about it. They really know what's going on now. And now it's like, you know what? I made an informed decision that this is not for me. Mm-hmm. Other people, it's okay. We've sold our house. It's closing in 90 days. I don't know where to go or what to do. It's like, and I get them. And it's like, okay, we got a lot of work to do. So, we basically create a giant matrix of all of their likes, wants, and needs, what they're after, what their financial situation is like, what their family history is like. So if they can get a second residency or second passport based on their ancestry, what that might be, are we going to buy a second passport? It's called citizenship by investment. Are we just going to get them a permanent residency and do naturalization and try to get them a passport that way? Is there a business that we need to restructure and move offshore? What are the tax obligations of the country that you're leaving? What are the tax obligations of the country that you're moving to? What are the tax obligations of the country that you might have something structured in? We have to go through many, 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 many different things on this and work the plan. So it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calls, hours to come up with a plan. And once they say, okay, Mikkel, this is it. I like it. Let's make it happen. Then I started introducing them to my team, the lawyers that I work with, all of my partners, and we take a call with them and we start going through and we start engaging their services and working the plan. And it takes 3, 4 months, 6 months sometimes to go through. But the transformation in their life is unbelievable. And Walt, I swear to God, you can see over the calls, suddenly their shoulders start to, settle and drop and they, they're changing their voice and everything. Like they start to really feel good as these pieces come together and they can really see. And while it's happening, everything's a little bit crazy. There's a lot of paperwork and things like that. But at the end of it, it's such a transformation and their whole life is different. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch and be there at that exact moment when everything changes for them and they realize that their life will never be the same, that they have this huge adventure in front of them. I don't know. I get such a kick out of it. Like, I just think it's it's so neat. And I really think that they will remember me for the rest of their life as being like their guide, their Sherpa to kind of walk them through this path.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
I think it's cool too. I love it. In fact, you're giving us a perspective. I'll put it this way. You're giving me a perspective that's a little different on the same topic from what I've experienced elsewhere, because you see it from the meat and potatoes. Let's get all the ducks in a row. How do we make this happen viewpoint? Whereas I've heard about it from, friends and so forth. I have a friend, for instance, who moved to Belize, and, she had to go through a fair amount, but it was nothing like what you're describing here. So I got to hear the other part of the story, but I didn't get to hear this part of the story. Mm-hmm. Hearing this part of the story just kind of reinforces, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you have to deal with when you're doing all this. And I say this because you mentioned perspectives. You've referred to perspectives quite a few times here. One of my favorite topics, because I really do believe that the more perspectives we can gain in life, the more well-rounded we become, the more tolerant we become. And I believe also the happier we become. I believe we become better, happier, more abundant, more productive individuals. So I love the fact that you're talking about that particular piece as well, the perspective piece. But that perspective of seeing not just what it's like, but also helping people get through it. That's a lot more than a hobby at that point. It's into lifestyle territory. It's obviously a business for you, but it's more than that for you, isn't it? This is the basis of life for you right now.
And it has been for a long time. I don't know. Calling, purpose, I'm not sure. Those are very esoteric words, but it does kind of feels like it, Yeah. It kind of feels like it.
It's very cool. And just talking to you, it's evident from the look on your face. You're loving it. You're absolutely adoring that you're doing all this stuff.
Well, the cool thing is that we really have complete control what we do with our lives. As long as we don't hurt people, steal from them, as long as we're honest and ethical, we can really do anything we want in our lives. So if you're going to build a life or a career or a job or a business, make it something that you're super excited about. Now, there are realities. You need to create something that someone is going to pay for. There's economics, but you would be surprised. There are specialists and experts, and if you do things to a high level and you dedicate yourselves to it, you can really do anything and everything you want in the world. So why wouldn't you build something that you absolutely love? I read and study about this. Okay. I read and study about it in my normal 8 to 10 hour workday, 5-6 days a week, working with clients, which is a complete learning experience every day on its own. But then at night, I still put in an audiobook and putter around the house and do my stuff and do my stretching and my exercise and things like that. And I'm still studying about these types of things. And it's not it's a phase. He's going to get out of it. It's I've been doing this for 20 years.
I think the phase is pretty much stuck there. Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Well, if you're going to be stuck in a phase, you might as well be one that you love. And that's what I keep getting from you over and over again, how much you're enjoying this. As usual, of course, we're starting to run short on time. I want to get a couple pieces of information from you to share with the public. First of all, for anyone who might be considering, the idea of a move overseas or a plan B or something along that line, how do they find out more about your company? And how do they find out more about Mikkel? Because, you're a pretty interesting guy. I'm sure people want to find out.
Sure. So my website is expatmoney.com. On there, you will see many different blog articles. Like I said, 200 episodes of the podcast. We do monthly webinars, tons and tons and tons of things. And that's all free content. And I stand by all of it. It's really excellent stuff. I have a team of people that help me produce that staggering amount of content. And when you see it, you will realize how much content it is. So that is all completely free. And I encourage you to subscribe and check that out. If you guys need more one-on-one help, I do work with high net worth individuals. On the website, on expatmoney.com, there's a big orange button in the top right-hand corner. It says work with us. There's a big letter there. Read that. There's an application form at the bottom. You can apply to work with me. I am in a very good financial position. I don't have to say yes to everybody, but for those people who really need help and have the financial means and the dedication and the drive to make this change, then I am here to help you. So that's the main thing. I will also mention that we are doing a online summit. It is November 7th to the 11th. It's free to attend. We're expecting 30,000 attendees. We have people like Doug Casey and Ron Paul and other really big names who I'm very lucky to call friends of mine who have agreed to come and speak. As I said, it's completely free. You can register and get your ticket right now. It's at expatmoneysummit.com. If you guys want a whole heap of bonuses and extra stuff, some really cool perks, there is a VIP ticket. If that speaks to you, then I encourage you to grab that. But if not, come and check out the summit for free at Expat Money Summit. And that's it. I think you're going to find lots of stuff there, Walt. Lots of stuff.
That's cool. And we'll include links in the show notes to make it easier for people to find those as well. There's one other question I want you to answer before we go, even though we're kind of short on time here. So if you can keep it short, that'd be great. But as you mentioned, you tend to work with high net worth individuals. There are going to be some people, of course, who don't have the means to hire somebody personally to help with something like this, but they're still interested in pursuing that. Give them an idea of where should they be giving their attention? What should they be paying attention to? Where should they get their information in order to figure out how to get there? Because they're going to have to do it pretty much on their own at that point.
Yeah, I would say that the resources on my website at expatmoney.com is an absolute gift. This did not exist. This type of information, first of all, doesn't exist pretty much anywhere else online, not this culmination of resources. Now, if it did when I started as an expat, my life would have been considerably simpler.
I'm sure.
I had to go through this the hard way. But
Right.
at expatmoney.com, I think you will find everything that you need. And, if it's a small thing, or if you just need an introduction, you say to me, hey, I want to get my residency in Panama, or I want to get my residency in Nicaragua. You shoot me an email. No problem. I'm happy to pass your name along or shoot you over to one of my lawyers or something like that. But for the people who really need the overall plan and all of the tax issues and everything that goes into it, you got to work with a professional, and as far as I know, there's no one else who does the very specific type of work that I do. So,
well, on behalf of those who you work with directly, thank you. And also on behalf of the people who will be looking at your website and picking up information. I like to do this with a lot of my guests now. On behalf of the people who you will never meet, who you'll never see, who pick up that information, thank you for putting that out there. Thank you for helping them. Even though you'll never see the help you gave them, I'm sure deep in your heart of hearts, you're helping a lot of people. And I want to thank you on their behalf.
That's really touching, Walt, because as a content producer yourself, you probably know that in a lot of times it's kind of a thankless job. You work really hard. You spend hundreds of hours, thousands of hours putting out stuff, and you don't get to see the results. I think that's why I like the consulting so much, because I do get to see the results. That's one of the main reasons that I work one-on-one with people, because I like to see that transformation. But yeah, thank you. That's very kind.
Very much appreciated too. And thank you for joining me on the show today. This has been a great conversation. You've taught me some stuff that I didn't even know you could do. That's really cool. I love that. So thank you very much, and all the best to you and to your team and to your family going forward. I wish you nothing but the best.
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks so much, Walt.
All right. And thank you to all of our listeners. We'll see you all next time here on The Crypto Skeptic and here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.